the real problem in this kind of autocracy democracy struggle that we're going on at the moment, this kind of conflict between the two and the rise of autocratic power around the world and the decline of democracies and democratic power in the world, is that the image of democracy is less appealing than it was a few years ago. And that is really worrying. For me, of all of the things that are happening in the world at the moment, that is perhaps the most worrying, that people are losing faith in democracy as a way of life, and that is making it easier for autocrats to push their own message. And the reason that President China says in China is that, our system of government delivers more for our people than a democratic system of government. There was a very interesting Swedish study that just came out in the last couple of weeks that showed how much over the last 10 years the image of democracy, and particularly of the United States as a democracy, has declined around the world. There was a Pew study earlier this year that showed that 17% of people around the world think the US is a good model for democracy. That is only 17% of people around the world who think that the US is a good model for democracy. By contrast, 57% of people around the world surveyed think it used to be a good model for democracy. And it's not just the presidency of Donald Trump, which alienated allies and we know caused a decline in America's reputation around the world. It's not just that. It's been going on for longer than that. This survey that has come out of Sweden showed that actually this started during President Obama's time. And I think it gets back to what I was saying earlier about the kind of shocks to the system. There was 9/11. There was the invasion of Iraq and the Iraq War and America's mishandling, frankly, of relations in the Middle East. There was the 2008 financial crash. There was the inability of the country to provide a social safety net to people who are worst hit by globalization and automation. People are watching very closely what is happening in the US at the moment in terms of racial justice issues in the country. They're very conscious of that. And America's own image and the image of democracy are intensely intertwined. It's hard to separate the two. America really is the beacon of a democratic example. And if America's image is tarnished around the world, then that appears, according to these analysts in Sweden, to be having a knock-on effect on the image of democracy writ large around the world. So if America itself seems less appealing as an ideal to other countries, then democracy also seems less appealing to other countries. And I think that's where kind of US domestic politics and the state of the kind of US society comes into it. It's why I read you those letters, because it is important to have independent, neutral voices in this conversation. The more polarization you have in America, the less gets done in Capitol Hill. We've seen that over the last few years. America's become pretty much ungovernable. You can't get things done unless you have a big, strong majority in the House of Representatives, the Senate, and in the White House. It's very hard. The two parties just won't work together. And that's partly a reflection of their polarized bases, that the country itself is becoming more tribalized. But it's a catch-22, right? It's sort of a vicious circle, because unless things get done, it plays into this idea that democracy isn't working, that you don't have the ability to make things happen for people that make them think, yeah, this country has a good system of government. I mean, it's why when President Biden phrases it, and I think to some extent he is right, when he phrases his own domestic agenda in global terms, the two are inextricably linked. So it's important to get things done, for example, on infrastructure, or he said on healthcare, or on social spending for childcare, because we have to show that we are delivering things for people. If we aren't delivering things for people, then it's not just the Biden administration not delivering things for people. It is the democratic process that is not delivering things for people. And if democracy is not delivering things for people, then people will look to other systems. They will start to say, well, hold on a second, this system doesn't work. Maybe something else is better that can deliver for me. It can't be worse because this hasn't managed to do anything. And I think that's a really fundamental point, that democracies have to work it's not just like everybody's going to wake up tomorrow and say, yeah, we love democracy around the world. They might have done that in 1992, 91 after the Berlin Wall came down, but they don't feel like that now. You have to, democracy is a product, a commodity that has to deliver for people's lives. And if it's not delivering for people's lives, they're going to go and buy another product. And that's what you're seeing happening. And I think you're seeing that happening in Asia. You're seeing it happening in Central Europe, in places like Hungary, and you're seeing it happen in places like Poland. And I wonder whether you might start to see it here too, even that people, even in America, start to think democracy is not necessarily the best form of government for us because it's not producing what we want. And I think that is why it is so important that we find a way to make government responsive to people and working for people.